Hello, Aussians and Shiz students. I'm Lauren Shippen, professional writer who is afraid of heights, so not going to be defying gravity anytime soon.
And I'm Cher McMullin, professional question asker and space holder.
Thank you so much, Cher. I really appreciate you holding space here for us.
Anytime, Lauren. I'm in queer media.
And this is Diaries, a podcast for you, the folks who are in this internet bunker with us. We talk about what's going on in our favorite hell site, get into what we like to call Tumblr lore, do fandom deep dives, and share the times when we've gone feral over a new ship. So, Cher, it is January 2025. Our last episode was November 2024. What have your last 2 months on Tumblr been like?
Nothing really. I don't think anything really happened or went on. No.
No.
Just a few things. Well, I think one big thing is teaser for the topic of our episode. Wicked premiered and took Tumblr by storm and has been trending on Tumblr for the past months. So definitely excited to dive into that. In addition to that, Tumblr's year in review came out in December. So always a great time to dive in on fandom.tumblr.com for listeners who want to check out what were the biggest things that happened on Tumblr in 2024. To give you a quick little preview, Gravity Falls rose in rankings across the board. It actually gained 56 spots to become the number one TV series of 2024.
The number one?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Isn't that huge? I was shocked, especially about like the growth in from like 56 spots on fandom rankings between 2023 and 2024.
Oh my God. And yeah, because I remember we talked about Gravity Falls briefly in an episode because it did have some sort of new announcement or something last year.
Yeah.
That surely like rejuvenated some of the interest in the fandom.
And it, I think, definitely was what's the ember that sparked. I'm looking for a metaphor here that is tied in with Gravity Falls, and I'm failing. I think I'm just going to circle back to the people on Tumblr are really holding space for Gravity Falls.
There you go. Oh, there you go. You got there.
There it is. We got there. And in addition to being the number one TV show of 2024, Gravity Falls also was number one on the ships list with the Bilford ship, which is Bill Cipher and Stanford Pines. So no surprise there. Generally, when it's the number one show, it's also the number one ship. But some great other nuggets of information there on the Tumblr year in review to check out. In addition to that, Nature Core was the number 19 most talked about topic on Tumblr. Which
Nature Core.
Really interesting to me. Yeah.
Huh.
And my note for that is I just wrote, the people yearn for the dirt.
The people do. The people do yearn for the dirt. Yeah, that's true.
And then finally, Lauren, following our last episode, I binge watched Dr. Odyssey.
Yes.
And I just want to thank you so much for introducing me to this chaotic ship show. Just absolutely fantastic. Loved it.
The most thruple to ever thruple.
Love the thruple. Love the fact. I think I saw a post that I reblogged to the Dashboard Diaries Tumblr, saved as a draft. That was like, essentially, this show is the best. There's no plots. It's just like every week, like today is Pink Week on the gay ship. Like perfect. No notes. I love it. I also, fun fact, in one of the final episodes, they introduced a new character. I need to go and check what her name is. She was like the blonde Stu with short hair. I went to high school with her and did sketch comedy with her.
Oh my gosh.
So shout out Jacqueline Taboni on SI Live. You're crushing it from SI Live. You're crushing it on Dr. Odyssey.
That's amazing. I love that.
It was very exciting to see. And I think I'll get into this more in my feels. Also, I'm sorry I have 15 million things.
No, this is so great.
Last month on Tumblr. But I'll get to it more in the feels corner. But Severance is back.
Yes.
And I've been waiting. We've all been waiting. I don't know. Do you watch Severance? I feel like
we just rewatched the whole first season to like prepare.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. So we're gonna have some things to unpack there. And then finally, there's a new show called The Pitt.
The Pitt.
Yes.
I am deep in the pit.
Okay, I can see from your reaction that you also are you a Pitt watcher? Are you in the pit?
I am so in the pit.
Yes.
And I think everybody should join us in the pit.
Everyone needs to join us in the pit. I mean, first off, are you kidding me? Like, Noah Weil, like, ER, now.
Okay, so here's the thing. So give our listeners a little bit of insight onto what The Pitt is.
Okay. The Pitt is a new procedural doctor emergency room drama on Max, and it stars the setup of the season is essentially like the show 24, where every episode covers an hour in the ER, or the Pitt as they call it in Pittsburgh is also where this is taking place, unsurprisingly. And the lead ER doctor and lead in the show and in our hearts in the Pitt is Noah Weil, who also was in ER, and just, I mean, he's still in the ER. He's still saving lives. He still looks great doing it. Really enjoying the show. And I feel like I'm hoping we can get a Grey's Anatomy, I don't know, I feel like this is maybe a little more prestige than Grey's Anatomy. Not to throw shade on Grey's Anatomy, one of my favorite shows also. But just, I'm excited to have another, an ER, that's the obvious comparison. Another like doctor procedural, hospital procedural to add to the list. Do you have anything to add, Lauren? Any thoughts?
Oh my God.
Notes?
I have thoughts on The Pitt. So it's funny because I've never actually seen ER. I think I've seen like half of an episode once because my parents were obsessed with it, right, growing up. And yeah, The Pitt is created by one of the writers from ER, and stars Noah Weil. And like Noah Weil, I think the thing that I know him from is Falling Skies, the sci-fi channel show about an alien invasion that I think me and 3 other people watched.
Yeah, I was going to say, missed that one. Got to add it to the list.
Yeah. It's interesting. Noah Weil presumably made $700 billion doing ER. And then between ER and this show, just made a bunch of like really weird, small little sci-fi channel shows, which I honestly love him for.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I was reflecting. So yeah, it's on Max. Like it popped up and I was intrigued by the sort of, it's 15 episodes. It's covering 15 hours in real time in an ER room kind of shtick. And we went into it not knowing what to expect. And now we're 3-4 episodes in, however many have been released. And I'm like, I'm loving it. And it made me reflect on the fact that I've never kept up with a medical show. I've never watched a medical show from like beginning to end. I watched like the first 5 seasons of Grey's Anatomy, maybe. I watched the first 8 seasons of Scrubs, but fell off when the cast changed. And so I'm really curious to see if The Pitt is the one that I stick to. Noah Weil is the most charming motherfucker on the face of the planet in this show. I am immediately at ease, even when he's looking at a woman's degloved leg. I'm just I trust you. I'm in good hands.
Truly, if I knew that he was the head doctor at my ER, I'm not saying I would be less careful, but I would also, if something happened, would know which ER I needed to go to.
And maybe be overly cautious whenever you bump your head, just in case, and go to.
Oh yeah, exactly that. Overly, not less careful, overly cautious.
Cautious.
Oh, this paper cut could get septic. I should really check.
I should really go to the ER. Yeah. I should go to the Pitt. I'm so glad you're also watching The Pitt. I think it's great.
Oh my gosh, me too. I am very excited to know more about all the characters they're introducing. They're just starting to breadcrumbing. I feel like that's when the excitement about a show really kicks in. I feel like I'm not quite there yet. I'm still getting to know everyone except for Noah. I love him now. And
he's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that's a very good 2 months on Tumblr and very busy.
What about you? What have your 2 months on Tumblr been like, Lauren?
I mean, I haven't gone into the Pitt tag yet, and I need to. And obviously, finishing up sort of the Dr. Odyssey season half. It's coming back in March, I believe, with 911, so I'm sure we'll be talking about it then. But it has been, and eventually we'll segue into our main topic, because it has been a musical theater heavy 2 months for me on Tumblr. And I've reblogged a little bit of this to my public Tumblr, but it's mostly on my personal. I did have a lot of feelings about Wicked, and did have a lot of feelings about Elphaba and Glinda in Wicked, which we're going to get to. But then also, I'm from New York originally. I was home in New York over the holidays, and it was a pretty packed holiday season, and I was also traveling around the East Coast throughout it. But something that my family always endeavors to do every holiday is go and see a show either the 26th or the 27th, that, post Christmas, let's catch a show. And my sister and her family were in Canada with her in-laws this year, so it was just me and my parents, and my mom was what show would you want to see? And I was I'm really curious about Water for Elephants, but also I just for the first time read The Outsiders this year, and so I'm curious about the musical of The Outsiders. And she got tickets for Water for Elephants, and then Water for Elephants closed in like November. And so she ended up getting tickets for The Outsiders. And like, yeah, I'd read the book. I saw the Tony performance, but like my parents had seen the movie in the 80s, but like they didn't like necessarily have any like feelings toward The Outsiders. They didn't know what to expect. None of us knew what to expect musically. And we were all blown away. Like, it is one of the best new musicals that I've seen in a really long time on Broadway. And when I say new musical, I mean like something that isn't where none of the songs are existing prior to the musical existing, right? Because obviously there have been like a lot of new musicals in recent years that have been jukebox musicals or like medleys, or you've got Moulin Rouge and you've got And Juliet and you've got all of those types of things. But like, and I've seen a lot. There have been some great new musicals in the last couple of years. Like I thought Kimberly Akimbo was super fun. I personally have a lot of feelings about Dear Evan Hansen, but probably like the best like musical that I've seen over the last 10 years was actually off Broadway, which was Octet, which is a Dave Malloy musical about internet addiction that is like one of the best pieces of art ever. But I think like the last time that I had this kind of reaction to a new musical on Broadway was Hamilton in like 2015. And like, I don't know. I was just like totally reinvigorated by this musical. And so like then of course I'm like diving into the Tumblr tag, and of course like the Tumblr tag for The Outsiders is like poppin', right? Like The Outsiders has been popular with teens forever, right? Like it is like the teenager book, but there hasn't been that much chatter about the musical itself. And I just, if you have feelings about The Outsiders, please come to the laurenshippen.tumblr.com and put feelings in my ask box, because like I really want to share feelings about this musical with people, and I don't really know anybody who's seen it. Have you seen it, Cher?
I have not, no, but you're inspiring me. I loved The Outsiders growing up, like when we read it in high school. I haven't read it since, but I remember really loving it, loving the movie, and also being like torn apart.
I've never
from
seen the movie actually.
And being in love with the cast. Oh my gosh, definitely watch the movie. I think it'll reinvigorate all the outsider feels. And now I have to go see this show. I live in New York. I need to go take advantage and see the show. You
have to. Like I already like I left the theater being like, when can I see this again? And I've been just like listening to the soundtrack on repeat. And I think like, not to get like too in the weeds on like musical theater nerdery, but I mean, we are about to do that for probably like the next 30 minutes. So actually I am going to take the opportunity to do that. So for our listeners who don't know, which actually like might be most of you, like my background is actually in musical theater. Like musical theater is what I studied, both in terms of performance and academically. And I like grew up in a very musical theater household. I have family who work in musical theater. And so it's like, it's very much like in my DNA. So I am both like, I think, always incredibly inclined to enjoy myself, and also can be incredibly picky. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I think frustrates me about a lot of new musicals now is that they, even if the songs are new and even if the songs are great, can sometimes feel a little bit jukeboxy, in the sense that it's like, scene, here's a song, here's a scene, here's a song. It feels like the musicals of like the 20s and 30s, right? And like, there's nothing wrong with that. It just isn't necessarily like my personal taste. I'm a Sondheim baby through and through. And so like, I really like having like a leitmotif that returns, or like musical ideas that we revisit and reprises and stuff like that. And The Outsiders really delivers on that, which is fascinating to me, because the music is by a band called Jamestown Revival. Like, these are not musical theater composers who wrote this musical. It's a band that wrote it. And, but they just repeat a lot of musical ideas. Like, a lot of the songs aren't necessarily like bangers that you're going to hear in auditions for the next 100 years, right? Like, they are songs that are serving the story, and they are songs that are like musically interesting, both in terms of the melodies and in terms of the orchestrations. And all the vocal performances were unbelievable. We saw an understudy for for Daryl, the eldest brother, and like the moment he opened his mouth, I was like, what on earth is the main guy who does this like? Like, because like this understudy is fucking incredible. Shout out to Dan Barry. You like blew my mind. And so now I have to see it again, like with Brent Comer, who's in that role. So I'm just like, it can't possibly be better than this. But like, yeah. And and also just like in terms of theater craft and stuff, it's some of the best directing and staging I've ever seen in my life. Like, it is the way that they use sound design, the way that they use lighting. I need you to see it, and then we need to do a whole episode on it.
Okay, I need to go. I'm like genuinely gonna go look into tickets for this because I similarly like haven't been overly excited or really very excited about a musical to the way that you fall into it once you've seen it since Hamilton. So like I saw Hamilton and I lost my entire mind. I was already listening to the soundtrack and like entering the lottery every day, and I eventually bought tickets to see it, and my boss let me go to a matinee midday when like
That's
my first year
right.
working at Tumblr, and it was just, oh my gosh, I think I didn't stop listening to the Hamilton soundtrack for any reason for about a year. So to hear like as enthusiastic of a review of The Outsiders as you like felt about Hamilton, or in so many words, yes, I'm sold. I'm going to go see this. I will keep you posted so we can do an Outsiders episode.
Please. and if you can, like I had the enormous benefit of like when I saw Hamilton, the cast album hadn't come out yet, and so like I hadn't been exposed to literally any of the music yet, and then like
wow.
I think it broke my brain in a very particular way because of that. And so I would say like I think musically speaking, The Outsiders isn't necessarily even attempting what Hamilton is attempting, but I think the music is great, and I would say don't listen to the soundtrack if you can help it before you see the show, because I always think if possible it's like good to go into a show cold. I realize that that's like an immense privilege to be able to do that, right? To have the ability to see musicals, and you live in New York, I'm from New York, and I go back there all the time, and so we have the opportunity to see shows, to get on the lottery every single day, and not just like the week that you're there visiting or whatever. And yeah, that leads me to, I'd say we just go right into our main topic, which is Wicked.
Yes.
And Cher, tell me your history with Wicked as a piece of art, as a fandom. What was the first time you encountered it?
I first saw Wicked, or encountered Wicked, as a teenager when it started on Broadway, I believe, and then I had heard songs from it. I knew Popular and Defying Gravity. I couldn't even tell you like where I heard these songs or how I heard them, just some on the internet, in the ether, and was deeply obsessed with them. And then when Wicked came to San Francisco, where I grew up, I saw it at the Orpheum Theater. I think I was like 16 the first time I saw it. I loved it. And I actually, my funny aside, my dad worked downtown at a hotel. And so they had these big 6-foot tall vinyl Wicked posters that they put all around. And when they took them down after Wicked's run, my dad managed to get one for me. So like in high school, like in my bedroom, I had like one of the like giant vinyl Wicked.
That's so cool.
Like show posters. I think it's in our basement somewhere, because I told my parents, don't you dare throw that away. I want that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So were you
I'm a fan,
were you a pretty big fan? Like, did you listen to the soundtrack a bunch after you saw it?
Yeah, I listened to the soundtrack a bunch, but I have always been like, I don't listen to soundtracks or like CD or to CDs. I don't listen to CDs all the way through, showing my age here. I don't listen to I've always been pretty bad about listening to albums all the way through. So I picked like my 2 to 3 songs, and this is during like iTunes days. So I definitely got like my favorite songs on iTunes and just listened to like pretty much Popular and Defying Gravity on such a loop that I'm like, upon rewatching or like upon watching the musical, like the film, for the first time since I had seen Wicked since I was a teenager, so many of the songs felt brand new. And my involvement in the fandom was definitely not, I wasn't like in digital fandom really. And I think, it ties into the letter that we'll dive into from the reader who inspired this episode, or to the listener who inspired this episode, who mentioned that Wicked as a fandom is older than Tumblr itself. And that makes, as a teenager, I wasn't really involved in any online fandoms until I was 18, 19. Yeah. So yeah, it was a very offline but dedicated love of Wicked. What about you? What was your relationship with Wicked?
I think a similar trajectory. I also saw it. I saw it on Broadway I know it was 7th grade. So this would have been like, I guess like 2001, 2002, probably. Like, I can't remember when Wicked opened, but it was in the first like couple of years of its run, I think. And I was in 7th grade. And I remember this because 7th grade was when I started wearing contact lenses. I've been wearing glasses since the 3rd grade. And when I started doing like plays and musicals in middle school, I didn't want to wear glasses on stage. And so I started wearing contacts. And I was still getting used to it. And we go out to dinner before the show, and like something gets caught in my contact. And like, I don't really know how to like deal with it yet, and I don't bring extra contacts with me everywhere I go at this point. And so I end up tearing the contact. And so I saw Wicked.
Oh my gosh.
With one contact in. And so I literally was sitting there the whole time with a hand over the eye that didn't have a contact in it so that I could just like focus. But I saw Wicked with one eye.
Oh my gosh.
But the sort of like, so like that sucked, right? Seeing it with one eye. But then the amazing thing was we just like happened to get lucky. I'm forgetting who originally played Fiyero on Broadway, but he had like back surgery or something. Like he was out of the show for like 2 weeks. And Taye Diggs, who was then Idina Menzel's husband, subbed in.
Oh my
and
God.
So we got to see Taye Diggs as Fiyero, which just because like we got lucky with the timing or whatever, which was just like very, very cool. And seeing like he and Idina Menzel were still married at the time, so obviously their chemistry was like incredible. And so like, I mean, yeah, and to the point of shipping, like I was definitely like a huge like Fiyero and Elphaba, and like didn't really think about the Elphaba Glinda stuff until much later. But yeah, I also like I do listen to albums all the way through. I did have the CD of Wicked, and it was like one of those cast albums that like I put in my blue boombox that I had.
Yep.
That I would bring into the bathroom and plug in for when I was in the shower so I could sing along to the soundtrack. And I did that for probably like 2 years. And then by the time that I was in high school, sophomore year of high school, like, I don't know, like it just kind of like fell off the regular rotation. And I basically didn't listen to it again. Yeah, until I saw the movie. So that brings us to, I did at one point try to read the book that it was based on. And like many people who attempted it did not finish it because it's a deeply, deeply weird book. But yeah, that brings us to, yeah, it's been 20 years basically since either of us saw the show. And now here the movie came out. And yeah, before we dive into the movie, maybe, as you mentioned, this was a listener suggestion to dive into this. And they sent us this really wonderful email talking about their own history with the fandom and how it's grown. But then also how, despite the fact that the musical is like this enormous, enormous worldwide phenomenon, I mean, it's still on Broadway, isn't it? Like it's still running. And there's global tours and all this kind of stuff. And like being Elphaba in Wicked is like a big thing for a lot of women in musical theater to kind of like launch the next stage of your career. The fandom is still really small. And it's a passionate fandom. There's a huge sapphic shipping portion of the fandom. Like that is the biggest ship in the fandom is Gelphie, Elphaba, and Glinda. And obviously now with the movie, they sent us this email before the movie came out, the landscape of the fandom may change. So thank you for this Tumblr user who's at Banned from Theaters or at Wickedly Queer. Thank you so much for this suggestion. And let's dive into the movie. Cher, what did you think of the movie?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. The singing was fantastic, like obviously. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the film. I will say going into it was a little concerned that with Ariana Grande's casting as someone who is she's so well known as Ariana Grande. She's like one of the biggest pop stars in the world, that I would feel like I was watching Ariana Grande play Glinda instead of watching Glinda. And I will say, like, I got fully into it. I got like fully caught up in the magic of like the musical and the acting. I thought it was really well done. I'm excited for part 2. It was pretty long, but I still feel like, I don't know, I went and watched some of the deleted scenes after seeing a lot of comments on Tumblr about how like the deleted scenes added even more to it. And I felt like, yeah, a few of them should have been in there also. So I understand how it ended up being so long, especially for a 2-parter. But yeah, I really enjoyed it and thought it was fun. I also, starting off when I first saw Wicked and like as a teenager, the Gelphie ship never crossed my mind. Like I was just like, this is a show about 2 best friends. Look at them being best friends, but they fight, but they're best friends. Enemies to friends. And now, like as watching this, I guess with more, I mean, now I'm queer and I didn't realize that as a teen, but and like so many other, like being involved in fandom and everything, watching this, I was wondering to myself, how could I have not noticed in the past, like how obvious that these two women are in love with each other. And I know that it's, I mean, I guess not technically officially canon, but it feels like everyone involved agrees that it's like Gelphie is canon, which I also really liked. Like I saw a Tumblr post that I reblogged and will share to the Dashboard Diaries Tumblr that said that there was fear in the fandom that this film might not lean into, you know, like the queerness of the friendship and relationship between Elphaba and Glinda, and how everyone was very excited that that was not the case, and it actually seems to have doubled down, which again, I don't really remember the musical, like the Broadway show very well. But based on this, I can see how the Gelphie ship is the number one and just very obvious ship in the show, and it feels canon to me, frankly. What about you? What'd you think?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was really well made. I personally would have made some different choices on the sound mixing when it came to the songs. Like and at first I thought it was just my theater, but then I talked to a couple other people who also had the same reaction, where it just like everything felt a little bit too quiet in an interesting way. And ultimately, I think it just comes down to taste and to them doing some live recording of vocals on set, which personally, and this is another discussion entirely, I have a lot of problems with. I think that that's a bad idea. I don't think we should be doing it in movies unless the music is diegetic, right? Like unless the, like Once, right? Like the musical Once, where it's like it's about two musicians who are singing in the environment that they're in because they're like literally like at a piano or whatever.
Yeah.
That's beside the point, because the singing is like just fucking incredible and the orchestrations are beautiful, and like that's just like a personal preference thing. So that kind of like took me out of it a little bit throughout the movie. But then also at the climactic moment in Defying Gravity, when she goes "It's me" and then sings the big moment, I burst into tears. Like just started like inconsolably weeping. So I'm like, this is working. Like clearly this is working. And like I can have as many quibbles and quabbles as I want, but like I think as a movie it was incredibly effective. And yeah, that is the thing. I totally agree about Ariana Grande. I had no idea what to expect. I would say I went in being like neutral to neutrally positive about Ariana Grande as a figure. I didn't really know anything about her as a person, and I like 3 of her songs and don't know the rest of her music. I am like a huge Ariana Grande fan now. I think she's amazing. I thought she was amazing in that role. I thought she was so funny. I just like, I was really blown away by her. I think because especially like Cynthia Erivo just like is one of the greatest singers alive.
Oh
and
gosh.
It's like, and I've had the good fortune to see her perform live, and it's just like, there was no part of me that was like surprised at any moment about like how great of a performance Cynthia Erivo was giving. Whereas I think for Ariana Grande, like it became her movie in my mind because I was so surprised, like because I just didn't know what to expect, right? Yeah. But I'm totally with you. I also like, I think I became aware of the Gelphie ship at some point, like maybe in like, I don't know, in the last like 15 years, like just by being on Tumblr and just by being in musical theater fandom, that I became aware that it was a thing that people shipped, but like I never really felt it. And yeah, watching it now and like knowing that I'm queer now where I didn't when I was in 7th grade or whatever, it's like Loathing is the ultimate enemies to lovers song. Like yes. These two women are obsessed with each other and they're in love, and Fiyero should be their like random weird third, and like I just don't understand why they're not kissing all the time. Like
I saw a post that we'll reblog as well that said it like before I knew that I was gay, I had a crush on a girl at my school, and I just wrote her a note that said "Get out of my school."
That's exactly it. Like, it's so good. Oh my God. And just some like interesting numbers about, because one of the things that Wickedly Queer, our listener, mentioned in their email was just how like they're a fanfic writer themselves of Gelphie fanfic, but how it hasn't been a very prolific fanfic writing community in comparison to the source materials popularity, right? And I did look back. So the Wayback Machine for the AO3 page for Wicked goes back as far as 2012. In 2012, there were a little over 70 fics in the Wicked all media types tag on AO3. And now there's just over 2,800, which is really surprising. Like, I was really surprised that there are only that many fics for a fandom that like millions and millions of people are into. So yeah, that was one interesting finding that I discovered as I dove in. How about you in diving in the Tumblr tag and the fandom? What are the things that jumped out to you?
A couple things. One, similarly, on the Tumblr side of things, though the Gelphie ship has been trending, it's been the top 5 ships in the top 2 ships for the past 2 weeks on Tumblr. And I'm saying this while also mentioning that there was a little bit of break in fandom rankings postings due to year in review. So it went October 28th was the last fandom rankings that we had until January. And then we just did them for the last 2 weeks. So though Gelphie has been... It was number 2 last week and number 3 this week. I'm pretty positive that Gelphie actually has been trending in fandom at least since the week that the film premiered, if not longer. So despite Gelphie trending, or despite Wicked trending for the past couple of months and being one of the most talked about titles on Tumblr, and it seems the internet, because I think everyone has been very aware of the Wicked press tour, the Gelphie tag on Tumblr only has 3.4K followers, and generally when you have a tag or a ship that's trending, you're going to see much higher numbers than that, 6, 7, 8-figure followers. Additionally, Gelphie has been a top ship in fandom for the past 3 weeks. It was number 7 this most previous in the week ending today, as the day that we're recording, January 20th. It was number 4 the week previously and number 2 the first week of January. So based on that and the fact that there was a break in fandom rankings between October 28th and January 6th due to year in review, I'm going to venture that Gelphie has been like the number 1 ship for about a month and just started dropping because the show came out, or the film came out at this point a couple months ago. So much to say. I, too, am really surprised at the juxtaposition between the amount of active posters and their impact on the kind of fandom ecosystem.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder if there are, and we would love to hear from you, listeners, other people who are big Wicked fans, if the fandom has felt different since the movie came out, right? Like, are the people who follow the Gelphie tag just the old guard that have been there ever since the musical came out, or are there new people joining and the numbers like aren't quite reflecting that yet, even though lots of people are posting? Because our listener did point out that the fandom has really just been a self-sustaining ecosystem for the last 20 years because the musical is still going on, but there's no new content, right? There's nothing new to obsess over. There's no, and obviously the movie doesn't like add more to the story necessarily, but it still is new content, right? And especially when it comes to like the Gelphie ship, like there's now like just even more material. And I think crucially visual material, right? Yes. We've talked about in the past how Tumblr thrives and TV shows and movies in particular gain sort of new fans on Tumblr through gift sets, right? And especially now that the movies come to VOD, I think we'll start to see a lot more gift sets. And I do wonder if that will help bring more people into the fandom, because it does seem like it's like the perfect cross-section of so many of Tumblr's interests.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as you mentioned, the content before the film was a lot of the few gifts that were available from the Broadway production of Wicked, other non-Broadway productions of Wicked, lots and lots and lots of fan art. And that was kind of pretty much it. And the letter that we got mentioned that posts were considered to break containment if they hit over 100 notes. It really was a pretty like small community, small fandom. Everyone knew who was posting, who was sharing content. And now just like perusing the Wicked tag, like you see posts at tens of thousands of notes, even more. And not just gift sets, but also revamping of old Wicked content that is like original posts that are now getting brought back to life. And yeah, I think the fact that there's so much more source material, not only from Wicked itself, but from the press tour, because I absolutely think that Ariana and Cynthia are Gelphie truthers.
Yes. That's actually a really interesting question, is if there is RPF of Cynthia, and because I haven't seen really much of that, but it does feel like something that like would would pop up based on the press tour, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. There are 8 fics for Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande as a ship. That's
only 8?
Fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, only 8. I should say, with all of these numbers, I am not logged into AO3 because I'm on a different browser. But actually, let me just, because now I'm realizing that those numbers might be totally wrong because ever since, this is a side note, ever since the sort of introduction of AI into the internet ecosystem, there has been a lot of concern over AI eating people's fics and sort of, okay, so a lot of people have locked their fics. Okay, there are 13. When I'm signed in, there are 13 works of Cynthia and Ariana Grande.
Oh, I'm going to have to log into AO3 and check out the fic community around I'm interested to see also how the fics about Cynthia and Ariana align with the Wicked universe, because I feel like there's got to be, I'm interested in if there's crossover there, because I feel like they did the press tour almost
as their characters.
Yeah, totally.
Also with just Wicked being about magic, and we know that an ordinary person from our world can go into Oz, right? Because that's what Dorothy is like. Are there any fics where it's Cynthia and Ariana meet Elphaba and Glinda and they're that would be my first thought.
Ooh.
I don't know.
Like that.
I would like to read that if anybody wants to write it.
They could get extra meta because there were also Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel were in Wicked, the film itself.
Yes.
They had that cameo in Oz.
Yes.
And I saw someone comment AU where Idina and Kristen are actually showing the happily ever after Gelphie, which is so sweet.
I really like that.
I also saw unrelated to fic and its impact on Wicked, on the press tour, shipping. Apparently, I saw a post about there being a Wicked, a Gelphie Titanic fic.
Ooh.
And then I saw that during Wicked, Ariana and Cynthia, or Glinda and Elphaba, do the Titanic pose. And
yes,
I'm not saying that the powers that be or someone involved in the film in some way knew about the fic, but the film read like people who were very aware of the fandom and the ships. So.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. And I think that I think too, when you think about not to get too serious with it, but when you think about the environment in which Wicked was written and released on Broadway and the environment that we live in now, obviously it is January 20th today. So the world is complicated, but it's so funny. I can't remember why we learned this, but my partner and I were reflecting the other day. We saw the statistic that I'm going to now totally butcher, but 20 years ago, the overall American approval of gay marriage was 13%. And now it's 78. Just in 2 decades, it's skyrocketed, right? And I think that sometimes, and we've talked about this before on the show, sometimes I forget that gay marriage only became legal in the States in 2014. It's been 11 years, right? So I do wonder too if the people involved for the movie felt more empowered to lean into those themes and that relationship because we just are existing in a very different environment than we were back then.
Absolutely.
And oh yeah, just another thought that I had about the press tour, and that I don't know what this says about fandom or what it says about these particular works of art or what it says about male/shipping versus femme/shipping, which is always a very complicated piece of discourse around Tumblr. But I think the reason that I expected so many more fics for the Cynthia Ariana tag based on the just insanity of their press tour is that Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is an incredibly one of the books that I think brought romance into mainstream fiction and also then was turned into a movie on Amazon, right? Started as fic for The Social Network, but not for the movie The Social Network, but for the press tour. And specifically RPF between Jesse Eisenberg and Andrew Garfield.
Are you kidding? I had no idea about this.
I am not. So this is as far as I can tell, this is not something that you're going to necessarily like Google and like find like Casey McQuiston talking about this anywhere or like any kind of like obviously the fic that they had written back then doesn't exist online anymore. But like I have some people in my fandom circles who were in that fandom back in the day. And yes, that is where this book came from.
Unbelievable. Fandom's
so like
impact.
press tours can really bring out the real person shippers in people. So like I think I was expecting a lot more from that, but perhaps I also think that we live in a different time now in terms of celebrities' relationship to the public and how much they're talking to the public and stuff versus Social Network was like 2011 and everything. So it's like we weren't seeing celebrities constantly on TikTok and Instagram. And we didn't have the same kind of access to them. And so maybe it felt a little bit more exotic to see actors being interesting with each other on press tours.
This is like the Gerard Way Twilight like domino effect. This is so
the 9/11 led to 50 Shades of Grey.
Yes.
Exactly. Or no, my favorite is 9/11 led to the fall of Ellen DeGeneres. Drawing a straight line between that and through Twilight.
Oh my gosh. Oh, because of the actually Ellen moment? Wow.
Exactly.
Yep. I see it.
Yeah.
Internet historians really, really doing some special work.
Really, truly. Yeah, any sort of final Wicked thoughts, feelings, observations?
One of my first reactions as I was watching this or thoughts was, wow, I am really interested in both reading the Wicked books and the Oz source material. But true, like I feel like there's so much that I don't know that, again, speaking of the press tour, that Ariana Grande definitely knows because she was referencing like deep cuts of like she is aware of the lore, which again makes me like, I think added so much to the film. And
absolutely.
I mean, obviously the press tour and I made like is fantastic. I love it when an actor gets all in on the lore. But I'm also really like interested to know, you said you stopped because it was so weird. Can we just get like, is there like an example that comes to mind or just like a general vibe of like what made was it the Wicked book that you read? The Wicked books or the Oz books?
So I've read the original Wizard of Oz series, and I actually love those books. Like, I actually think that the first book in that series, like the way, like I was always a huge like Tin Man and Scarecrow fan in the movie growing up, and like the way that the book sort of dives into those characters, I think is like just a lot more three-dimensional than like and I love the original movie. Like I wrote a paper on it in college. I've seen it like genuinely 70 times. But yeah, I really do think that the original Baum books are worth reading. The Wicked book is just like, I found it, granted it's been 25 years since I tried to pick it up. It's very long. It is very dense in a way that's like, or at least it was for me as like a 13, 14-year-old trying to read it, right? It was like dense in like a not fun way. It was like pretty dry. And I gave up on it pretty quickly, but apparently at one point there is like an animal orgy with like all of the speaking animals, which I did not get to.
All right. Noted.
So I can't speak to the veracity of that rumor, but that's what I've heard.
Dry except for the orgy.
Exactly. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on both the original source material and Wicked if you get around to reading either or all.
Yes, I definitely will keep you posted. I've got to add those to my Libby list.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, in terms of going back to old source material, should we dive into our own archives and do some dashboard confessionals?
Let's.
Excellent. What do you have this month from your archives?
So I have 2 posts this week. The first one I reblogged in January 2018 from the Booty Diaries, one of my personal favorite Tumblr accounts. And I think this post just really encapsulates my overall vibe of how I feel today, January 20th, 2025. And it's an ask that says, if you could change, and by the way, I just want to clarify for our listeners that almost every word in this ask is misspelled. If you could change your name, what would you change it to? From Anonymous. And Iguana Mouth answered 40 exclamation points in a row, and it is pronounced like a person screaming.
That's so good and so real. Oh my God.
Just, yeah. Felt like a really relatable for the day. And the next post I reblogged in 2020, in January 2020 from Carrot Discs. And it is like, it's a reblog chain about the Chronicles of Narnia and Lord of the Rings series. And the first post says, though I still love Chronicles of Narnia, the older I get and the more I learn, the clearer it becomes to me why it would have driven Tolkien completely insane. And then Off-Brand Hipster reblogged and says, the Santa part almost ruined their friendship. to which Ivan Fjordovic has a text post that's quotes from, like, fake quotes from Tolkien and Lewis. Tolkien says, if you can't just patch random things together because you like them. Everything has to fit in a dense textural weave of reasonable causes and effects. And Lewis says, and then the witch from the other dimension turns the fox into stone for having a contraband tea party. And it just goes on like that. We'll reblog it to Dashboard Diaries.
So good.
And I felt like it was just a great, I don't know, felt like it tied in with the vibe of what we were talking about.
Totally.
Universe, like, you know, universes that are created in fanfic. And I am just a huge Tolkien and Lord of the Rings fan. So any post that I see about it, I will try to tie in somewhere.
I love it. I love it.
What about you? What do you have from the archives this week?
So the first post I have is from flightcub.tumblr.com. And this is a post that is really going to work better reblogging it to dashboarddiaries.tumblr.com, but I will read it. It says, my 3 favorite things are the Oxford comma, irony, and missed opportunities. And the reason this is great is because it uses the Oxford comma. The Oxford comma is present. And I just think that it's a solid, well-crafted joke. I really enjoy it. And it just, I think, is the perfect Tumblr joke, right? It's like nerdy, a little bit stupid. Like, it's
the perfect text post, truly.
It's the perfect text post. Yeah. Absolutely. And then the second one I have is a little bit random. This is from January of 2017. And I was curious, like, what was I reblogging in January of 2017, right? Because obviously January of 2025 is having some similar unfortunate beats to it, right? We're revisiting some parts of our history that I rather we didn't. And one of the things that I reblogged was a post from December of 2016, so just a month earlier, that is a Vine compilation, right, of a bunch of Vines that this person loved and put together. And it just had me reflecting on, A, Vines are still fucking hilarious.
Love Vine.
And B, like, the more things change, the more things stay the same. And this past weekend, we had this whole kerfuffle with TikTok. Once you couldn't get access to it anymore, I have been on TikTok reluctantly for the past couple of years, and I was just like, great, delete app. And now, of course, it's back, but I can't download it again. So I'm just sort of like, I think I'm free. Like, I think I don't have to think about this anymore. And not to get too serious, but like, I think that it's so interesting to me how, so like, I do a lot of driving for a part-time job that I have. And so I'm constantly driving past road work ahead signs, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen that Drew Gooden Vine that's him saying, have you ever seen this Vine?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Like,
that's,
perhaps you describe it. I have the compilation going.
So it's not in the compilation, but it's a Vine that I get, like, very famous to, I guess, a subset of the internet. And Drew Gooden obviously is now like a pretty significant YouTuber, but it's him driving and he passes a road work ahead sign and he goes, road work ahead? I sure hope it does. And
yes,
just like now, every time I pass one of those signs, I just think, I sure hope it does. And like, so not to get too philosophical, but like, there are a lot of Vines that like have stuck in my head that I still see reference on Tumblr all the time, that I say with my friends as shorthand. Vine ultimately was an incredibly short-lived platform on which some creators burnt brightly, but for a short time, and some creators moved to YouTube and ended up establishing pretty big careers over there or on Twitch or wherever else. And I just think it's a really good reminder that like you cannot rely on any platform for anything. And like, obviously, I hope to never leave Tumblr, and I hope that Tumblr can be the place that I can hang out with other fans of things that I love forever. And Tumblr has been the one sort of like solid place in the last 15 years of my life on the internet. But like, now I'm over on Blue Sky, right? Left Twitter. I'm leaving Instagram in March once the fact-checking contracts with Meta are up, because I just don't want to be there anymore once those are gone. And yeah, I just think that it's a good reminder that like if you are an online creator, if you are somebody who is a fan artist and loves interacting with other fans, your presence on a platform and the things that you create, no matter how briefly they exist on that platform or how briefly that platform exists, can still live forever in people's minds. Mm-hmm. And also, don't trust any of these social media platforms to sustain you, right? Yeah. And also, may Tumblr live forever. Amen.
Tumblr forever and always. Nevertheless, Tumblr persists.
I mean, truly.
Yeah. And also, I mean, speaking of vines that live forever in our hearts and tie in perfectly with what we're talking about this week, and they were roommates.
And they were roommates. Well, also not to mention Wicked Witch of the East, bro. You've seen that video, right?
Yes.
She came down in a bubble, dog.
Right. Grow up.
Grow up. Oh, so beyond musicals and the ephemeral nature of the internet, what has it got you in your feels this month?
Two things have me in my feels this month. One, we mentioned earlier in the episode, and perhaps we should do an episode on later in the season. Severance is back. Genuinely one of my favorite shows I've ever seen. Just so beautifully shot, so weird and dark and twisty and confusing. I love it. And so I'm just really excited that Severance is back. Yellow Jackets comes back in 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
February 14th is the season 3 premiere, and I am so excited about Yellow Jackets. I friggin' love that show, as you and all of our listeners know. So I would say what has me in my feels is these shows like that I really love coming back, having new seasons. I love it. I love season premiere time. So that has me in my feels. What about you, Lauren?
I think similar. Yeah, I think the Pitt has me in my feels. And I think part of why the Pitt has me in my feels is because we also just watched the new season of Goosebumps, which is like a show that everybody's sleeping on. Both seasons of Goosebumps are fucking great. They're just fun and they're well written and well acted, and it's just like a good time. I think that there's like a return of things like the Pitt, things like Goosebumps, like whether they're anthology or more episodic stuff. Like we've talked about this in the past with 911, Dr. Odyssey, things that you can kind of like jump into and that like are, I think, part of a healthy, balanced diet when you also are obsessed, like we both are, with things like Severance or like these more serious, like heady, you got to pay attention to all of the details kinds of shows, right? Like I think that we need both.
100%.
And yeah, I didn't know the Yellow Jackets was coming back. That's really exciting. I was really excited about Severance coming back. The first episode of the new season was fantastic. And now Thursday nights are Severance and The Pitt, which is just like a perfect double feature. Yep. I love it. The Pitt is like a good come down from Severance, which is hilarious because it's set in an ER. But it's
Take
less
a breather
stressful.
At the emergency room show.
Exactly. And also in a couple of weeks, my largest boy comes back to TV, the show that I shouldn't love, but I do, Reacher. Which I'm saying this now because, and they'll probably get me in my feels corner in February when it's out, but I want everybody to catch up on the first 2 seasons of Reacher. Have you ever seen this show?
I watched an episode, I think maybe the series premiere, but haven't since. It's the John, what's his last name? Krasinski show, right?
No, that's Jack Ryan.
Oh, what is
very
Reacher?
Similar thing. So both of these are dad bait, basically. Like both Jack Ryan and Reacher as series are made for dads. Jack Ryan is written by, they're both based on book series. And the book series have been so Tom Clancy wrote Jack Ryan, and Tom Clancy has been, like doing that kind of book series forever. And that is an Amazon Prime show with John Krasinski. Reacher is a book series by Lee Child, but like same kind of thing. Right? And it stars an actor whose name I cannot remember. I'm so sorry. But he is incredibly large. He's just a big man. And Reacher is essentially a show about him being very big and very autistic. Like that is what it's about to me. Like, so he is just this former, he's a veteran. And in the first season, in both seasons, he doesn't have a home. He's not unhoused. He like literally just is like a vagabond. Like he has his wallet with him and that's it. And like then he'll like buy a new shirt at thrift stores and throw the old one out. And like that's just how he lives his life. And then he just sort of ends up being like a sort of like Hercule Poirot, just like showing up in these like random American towns, like solving something with like immense violence. It's incredible. And I told my sister after the first season that I loved this show, and she was like, you love this show? Because A, it's dad bait. B, if you've talked to me for 2 seconds about any piece of media, and I will probably have taken it as an opportunity to turn it into a discussion about American masculinity. And this, like the Jack Ryans and the Reachers of the world are just like hyper masculine, like American patriotism, rah bullshit, right? Like I've never seen Jack Ryan, but that's very much like the thing that I get from it. But like somehow Reacher isn't that at all. Like, and this like, because Reacher is just like, he's just very on the spectrum. Like, I just don't know what other way to describe it. Like, he just like reminds me of like a lot of people that I know who are on the spectrum, in the sense that he just like, he's very specific. He's into the stuff that he's into. He's like, you know, I don't know. He's just like a very particular kind of person. And then his best friend / sidekick is this younger Black woman who is basically textually asexual. Like in the second season, they basically like make that text. And it's just like, I don't know. Like, it's just like every time you think it's going to be what you think it is, it's not. And it does that simultaneously while being everything that you think it's going to be. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, it is big man beats up big men. Like, that is the show. But also, like, it is weirdly clear-eyed about American violence, about the American military, even while it's still also, like, a little bit, like, patriotism porn for the American military. But it's not that. Like, I'm talking a lot. But, like, I would be curious to talk to other people about this show. And I would recommend it. It's very fun, and I'm very excited for it to come back in like a month.
Have you like checked out the Tumblr fandom around Reacher? Is there a Reacher?
I have not,
Tumblr
actually.
fandom?
There can't be.
Would that be too much of
like,
a reach?
Surely. Like, surely not, right? Like, surely other people on Tumblr are not watching the show. But you know what? Once we hop off, I am going to dig into it.
Well, I'm going to check out the show because pretty much I think 100% of the shows you have recommended me, I have watched in like a week and very much enjoyed. So next episode, we'll be taking a minute to talk about Reacher at the very least.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Maybe a Reacher Severance like deep dive.
There's some kind of juxtaposition.
There's some kind of juxtaposition there.
We can do there. We will
There's
find the
something
connection.
And with that, I'm Lauren Shippen, and you can find me at theLaurenShippen.tumblr.com.
And I'm Cher McAnelly. You can find me at overshares.tumblr.com. This has been Dashboard Diaries, and
may your nons always be loving,
your dash always refreshed,
your gifts always be loading,
and your ships always canon.
May the fix you're reading always be finished,
and the answers you seek always in the reblogs.
Thanks for scrolling with us.